crazy thing where I'm saying that we could take this house that's worth about $180,000 and turn it into $440,000 plus. And the crazy thing is, up front, with this kind of a deal, we can do these without spending any more than $10. So the investment is $10 to take a $180,000 house and turn it into a $440,000 deal. Now, all of that's not profit, but probably about, I don't know, we'll see those numbers in just a few minutes. Maybe 200,000 or so is profit. But anyhow, so yes. Okay. Okay. Heather was just trying to mess with my computer here. And all right. So, Heather, how do I get this to go down a slide now? It's not. Okay. All right, guys. Well, anyway, I'm Joe McNamee. I'm a real estate investor. I buy and sell a lot of real estate. And I have students all over the world that come and learn how to do this from me, in case you haven't seen or heard anything about me before. One of the things that's a bit unique about my program is that I teach people how to do real estate investing by doing my live deals in front of my students' faces. So people come and visit me at my office, and they'll sit there for 1 to 2 hours, maybe even 3 hours as a fly on the wall, and just witness me and my staff interacting with buyers and sellers and professionals and making real estate deals happen and happen during the week, usually 5 days a week. The other thing that I do is I connect with students, I bring them into my world, and then I help them start doing real estate deals too, and help them negotiate their deals. Sometimes I'll do it for them until they're able to do it on their own. We do form some sort of a joint venture partnership agreement where we can work together and make more deals happen for them in the beginning. Sometimes people need that extra hand holding to get going. Some do and some don't. Some like it, prefer it that way. But that's what I do. I do this regularly. I've done, gosh, I think I lost count now. It's somewhere around 4,035 or 4,045, somewhere in that ballpark. I try to keep a running tally at my desk, but I'm not at the office at this minute. But anyway, that's the number of deals I've done, and then there's been a tremendous number of student deals that I've done also. So tonight we're just going to talk about this first deal. This one deal that, like I said, is actually Lee's deal. So what we're going to do is I'll show you a little series of pictures just to kind of give you an idea of what this whole situation looks like. So where we're standing right now with this picture being taken, or actually where Lee was standing, is just about, his back is just about at his house, and he's taking a picture across his yard into a lot that's connected to this, that's not subdivided off. So if you see that white piece of PVC pipe sticking up out of the ground, that's a water line that we ran to that lot. Okay, so that is referred to as lot number 1, and it's about 7/10 of an acre. Okay. There's Lynette, Lee's wife. She's picking up sticks and kind of cleaning up after a lot of trees came down to make it possible to do what they want to do with this property. But that's the house that they're getting. And by the way, this house could have been an investment property where they could have just taken it over for $10, set everything up without spending any other money on this, and turned around and sold this deal for around $300,000. So taking over the property with $10, this house they would be buying for $180 and selling it for around $300,000 if they didn't want that house to be their house. Now what they chose to do is make this their home, so that house has become their house, their home. So Lynette is standing on the same property that we just showed the picture of previous to this one here. So that's lot number 1 that she's standing on, approximately 7/10 of an acre. Then the house is on about an acre of ground, all right? And then we'll go to the next one, which is on the opposite side of the house, which is about 8/10 of an acre. So, and that one there is lot number 3. Okay, so let me see if I can go back. Yeah, so you got lot 1, lot 2, which is the house, and then lot 3. So that's 2.5 acres, and that's going to be important for you to realize that 2.5 acres in a little while, because it proposed a little bit of a problem that we had to overcome on this deal. All right, so again, that's lot number 3. And oh, by the way, Lee took this picture. The guy that's in the truck is actually the original owner of the property, and so he's the seller. And he thought Lee was taking a picture of him, but what Lee was actually taking a picture of is a hawk on that fence post. So if you look right square in the center of that picture, there's a hawk sitting right there on that fence post. Okay, so again, that's lot number 3. And then this is the front yard of lot number 2, which is the property that the house is actually on. So that's actually, so the back, right now behind us, looking at this picture, is where Lee's house is. And there's the logs stacked up for the trees that Lee wanted to take down. You can see all the places where the stumps were grinded around the front yard there, but there was a lot of pine trees that he was worried about, didn't want them to fall and hit the house and all that kind of stuff. So he wanted to get rid of pine trees and keep hardwoods. All right? Okay. So, oh, there's there was an issue with the roof. I decided to go over, take some people over, and help out with redoing the roof. That's me up on the roof with Lee and Lynette's son. I think he's 13. That's Gabriel. And so I was teaching him how to do some shingling, so I was showing him how to run cap shingles up the roof there. But anyway, so we wanted to take care of the house roof to make sure that there's no leaking issues, and so we reached out and helped on that. Okay, so now let's talk about this deal. We have 3 separate lots, one with the house on it, and the other 2 lots, one was subdivided off, but the other one wasn't. Now, the subdividing off really wasn't very helpful for us because rules had changed in this area where you used to be able to take a little less than 3/4 of an acre and make that its own independent home site, and that would allow, if the soil was satisfactory, it would allow you to have a well and a septic tank, and so you could have your own, a single-family dwelling on that property and no issues. Well, the rules changed in early 2000 to having 1 acre instead of 8/10 of an acre or 3/4 of an acre. It changed to 1 acre. So when it changed to 1 acre, those 2 lots on each side, the 0.7 and the 0.8 acres, don't really qualify for putting a single-family home on each one of them. However, if we take the well that services the house, which is on lot 2, and allow that to feed lot 1 and lot 3, now we're not sure of the capabilities of that well. We may have to change the pump and increase the storage tank capacity, size on it, which runs right around $1,800 to $2,200 to upsize that well to handle 5 home sites. Of course, we only need to handle 3, so 5 takes care of that. Now, once you do that, there's no need for a well on lot 1 or lot 3, so all you need is a septic tank. Well, now that drops down the requirements to 1/2 an acre if you go through all the trouble of creating taking that well and turn it into what's called a community water system. Now, you can still use the well to service the 2 lots, but if the properties aren't able to have enough space to have a septic tank on each one and a well on each one, then you're kind of running into an issue again with the health department and the powers to be in the building and zoning side of it. So we still needed an acre of ground for all 3. Okay. Well, what we don't have a picture of here is, but you can see the trees behind it. There's a huge piece of property behind this house. So what we did was we talked to the owner of it, and it's a brother and sister who both own it. The sister's signing it over to the brother for the brother to make the decisions, and so we already negotiated the deal. to take a sliver of that property and promise not to change anything about that sliver, but take a sliver of it that ups the size of all 3 lots so that all 3 lots each are 1 acre. So we thought it was going to be 5/10 of an acre, half an acre, but it ended up being 7/10 once the new survey was done and figured out. So, but the landowner behind was perfectly fine with that. So we negotiated a deal with him to get that sliver of property. So now that creates 3 completely separate, independent lots. Lot 1, 2, and 3 can have a well and a septic tank of their own on it, but it's still not worth spending the extra money to put 2 separate wells, one on Lot 1 and one on Lot 3, when we can use the well that's on Lot 2, and if the well doesn't have enough capability to keep up with the 3 home sites, then we can upsize the pump and the storage capacity and not have to go through the community water system situation. But then in the future, if anything were to happen, they're still able to put their own well and septic tank on Lot 1 and on Lot 3 that doesn't, cause any problems with any kind of health department issues or building and zoning issues or whatever. So all those problems are now solved. And that all took, and I can't remember the amount of time. I'm going to bring Lee on in just a minute, but that didn't take much of it all. Maybe a couple of days to a week of getting it all ironed out, figuring out what the challenges were, identifying the problem, and solving them for a fair profit. Okay, so now what the big issue for Lee is, I'm going to bring him on now and let him talk about where he's got some things he wants to do. He wants to own this house, live in this house, keep this as his private residence, and have the 2 home sites, one on each side of him, that pays for him to live in this house and then some. So Heather, if you would unmute Lee so that he can come on and we can talk about this some more.
All right, Lee, you should be good to go now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Lee, can you turn your volume up just a little bit more, or bring yourself closer to your microphone?
How about that?
Okay. Get yourself a little bit closer to your microphone.
Okay. How about that?
That's pretty good.
Okay.
Can you hear him okay, Heather? Okay, can you turn your volume up just a little bit? See if your volume's up already. Okay. All right, Lee, count to 5 million by 2. No. Just say one more thing.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Okay. All right, that's a little bit low, but we're going to go with that. So, all right. So, Lee, what was the first thing you were thinking when you saw this property? And you actually, let's back up a little bit. You actually were selling the house that you were living in, and that's when you didn't believe what we could do, but you figured you'd take a shot at a chance with us. And tell us what happened from there in the house that you were living in.
Well, it made a believer of me, of the system, because the house I'd lived in for about 10 years, I put it up on a weekend and it sold that weekend. Minimal work on my part. It really shocked me. So
yeah,
made me a believer.
Yeah, taking our system and selling it quickly like that. Because you're actually a realtor, right?
I have a real estate background, yes.
Okay. All right. So you did that. Now, who were the buyers? Not their names, but where did they come from?
They actually came from the house that I purchased, and they were familiar with buying lease option, and they just fell in love with the house initially.
Okay, so
it was so easy to talk to them. Go ahead.
Okay, so you, your buyers for your house, you said they came from the house that you bought. You're talking about the house that we're seeing on our screen right now, right?
Yes.
So they were renting that house, is that right?
They were renting this house, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so now, so then when they popped up on your radar screen to buy your house, and you told me that they were moving from a house that they were renting, then I said, what to you?
Well, you want me to check out to see if the people that own that house would be interested in selling it, and I did.
Okay.
That.
All right. So now the renters who popped up on Lee's radar screen to become the buyers of the house that he lived in for 10 years were renting this house. And so then Lee did exactly what I told him to do. He set up a meeting for me and he and me. There you go. For the two of us to talk to the seller of this property to see if we can't negotiate a deal where we could take this over. Now, at that time, I don't think you thought about it, and I know I didn't think about this becoming your new home, but you were doing it just as an investment property. Is that right?
That's correct. I didn't have any intention to live in this house.
Right. Okay. So then, as time went on and we negotiated the deal, then you guys kind of fell in love with it and decided that instead of making money off this house and only spending $10, you decided to make this your personal residence that you could live for free in and then make some money off of it at the same time.
Blame that totally on Lynette, and yes, you're absolutely correct.
Okay, so that's all Lynette's fault.
Yeah.
All right, so now the next step is we've got two, they're not quite raw lots. So the next step in this process, once we got the acreage taken care of, the next step for you was a scary one, worrisome. You sent me a few messages going, where am I going to get the financing at to put homes on these two lots, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so then what did I tell you to do?
Listen to you.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so the next thing that I said is, well, let's set up a meeting with the same seller again, because we negotiated the deal for you to acquire their house. Let's see if we can't talk to them again about another thing that we could do for them. Now, we didn't have to do this with the seller, and to be honest with you, it actually cost you a little bit more to do this with the seller than to do what we're about to talk about with someone else, but I just thought it would be kind of cool to work with the seller, and they're just a really nice couple, and let them get a little bit of the benefit out of what you're going to do with this home. That's, you know, this whole project that used to be their home. Their kids grew up in this house. Okay, so you set up the meeting. They came in. We sat down, and here's what we talked about. So now I think I'm taking you to the next slide now. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so you know what? I've got the lots mixed up here on this. If you can kind of look at that slide and realize that lot 1 and lot 2 are reverse. So lot number 1 is worth 130. Lot number 2 is worth 180. Lot number 3 is worth 130 when we get done with everything we're going to do. Okay, and the truth of the matter is, the one that's 180 is actually worth around 217, but I'm just going to use the low number of 180 on that to show exactly what we did to take the value from 180 to 440. Okay, so we're going to put a home on lot number 1 and a home on lot number 3, and they're going to be two double wides that are going to be somewhere between 1,600 and 2,000 square feet each. They'll be between 3 and 4 bedrooms, and they'll have 2 to 2.5 baths in each one of them. All right, so now let's look at what the seller is actually paying. So I want you to, everyone who's paying attention to this, I want you to realize that banks can't write checks like they used to, and so sellers are willing to do this all day long. So the whole shoot and shebang, the house and the 2 other pieces of property that are really all one piece of property right this minute, the seller is paying $1,200 per month. The seller owes about a little over $66,000 on the whole thing, and the seller is willing to allow Lee to have this whole thing with a monthly payment of $900 a month. So that means that it costs the seller $300 every month for Lee to live there. Does that make sense to everyone? So the seller's monthly payment on their mortgage is $1,200, and that's principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And Lee is paying $900 per month. That's the deal that we negotiated on it. So we brought the seller in, it's a husband and wife, and we sat down and we explained everything. They've seen the stuff that we've been doing, and they've noticed that, you know, Lee's already invested in taking some trees down that were kind of dangerous, that were in the way of progress for what we're going to do with Lot 1 and 3. And then Lee also fixed the roof on the house, you know, completely redone the house. Now the house has a 30-year roof on it. And so Lee's investing in the property, doing those things. Now this is no longer $10. Now remember, he's decided to make this his personal residence, not just an investment property. He wouldn't be doing any of that if he was just going to keep this as, you know, do this as an investment property. But look at what we talked to the seller about. Mr. Seller, if you're willing to refinance this property, we're figuring you can get around a 5% or less interest rate for 30 years on this property. Now, the first thing the seller said, but I only owe for 6 more years. And I said, yes, I understand, but it's costing you $300 per month on this whole thing. Let me show you how you can make $600 per month off of this, and you'll solve Lee's issue and make Lee be able to work on cashing you out faster. But all the while you're waiting for him to cash you out, instead of this costing you $300 per month, you'll be making $600 to the good every month. Okay, now some of you may have already caught it and realized what I just said there, but let's just go through the rest of the numbers. So Lee's paying $900 per month. It costs the seller $1,200 per month to the mortgage company. All right. So if if the seller refinances this at 5% at $130,000 for 30 years, their monthly payment drops to just shy of $900 per month, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So if Lee's paying $900 per month and the seller has a $900 a month debt to pay, then that's an even wash. But the reason we want the seller to refi is so that the difference between the $66,400 that they owe and the $130,000 can be cash that Lee can use to acquire the other 2 mobile homes and the septic tanks and the setup and the whole 9 yards to get this whole thing finished and to buy that sliver of land. By the way, Lee, what was the purchase of the land price? Was it $12,000?
Yeah, it was $12,000 for a half acre, but it was a little more because we went to 0.7, 0.8.
Okay. What did he want more on it? Was it like $15,000 or so?
It was $24,000 for the whole acre, so we just got to figure it out for, say, the 0.7 or 8, whatever the survey.
Okay, so that's about sounds like about $15,000 or so, $16,000, somewhere in that ballpark. Okay. All right, so that means $16,000 is going for that sliver of land to make it to where there's 3 separate 1-acre tracts of land. Where does that money come from? Comes from the difference between the $66,400 and the $130,000. So what is that? 64. Yeah, $63,600 or so. So let's just call it 60 grand. So there's 60 grand there for Lee to take out of it for buying the sliver of land, paying for that. Then we're figuring that we can buy. What's the price ranges you've seen so far, Lee, on looking for these mobile homes?
The 2 that we were really interested in were perfect as far as homes go. They were around $29,000, but I've seen them go as low as $5,000 or $6,000.
Okay, so what I've said to Lee on this is I don't mind him going ahead and spending somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000 on one of the mobile homes. But the second mobile home, what I'm interested in is him taking over the payments on it only. So let's say that he finds a second mobile home out there that's got let's say it's got a $300 a month payment on it or a $500 a month payment, so a $400 a month payment. So if he takes over the debt on that mobile home and moves it to the property, then he doesn't have to take more of that cash and use that cash to buy the mobile home. He can just take over the payments on it. So and to do that, sometimes if people receive a couple of $1,000s, they'll allow you to take over the payments on it, and they're happy because they weren't going to get much more than what was owed on it anyway. And usually they don't get as much as owed on it because they lose value when they're not set up as a permanent home site. So when we take a look at this, Lee's, let's say he had to spend $18,000 on the land. So there's $66,435. I'm going to add this up. That's an original bank loan that the seller has. So we got $66,435. Oops, $435. All right, and then we go $18,000 for the land. Okay. Then we go, let's say $27,000 for a mobile home, because we're going to get a discount on that. Now that's a grand total of $111,435. So we still have a around, oh man, what did I do here? We've got around $19,000 or so to still play with this. And so if we look for the second mobile home, now there's one that we've looked at that would cost around $15,000 to, but it needs a little bit of work, so some blood, sweat, and tears would have to go into that. But there are mobile homes out there that we can get, and we've got a couple of months to play with this because we still have a little bit of just bureaucracy to go through to finish up this whole thing before the actual homes can be set on the site. Now, that means we've got 19 grand left to play with, and let's just say we only have 15,000 left to play with. That's plenty of money to make someone happy to let us take over their mobile home, move it, get it set up, hooked up, septic tank, all that kind of stuff done and over with on both of those properties. So now Lee would have a monthly obligation of $897 that covers the, or let's just call it $900, which is he's already paying it anyway, that covers the debt on his home plus the 2 lots plus the acreage behind it that was added to it plus the 2 homes plus the you know, the septic tanks, and if the well had to be upsized, there's money there for that. And then he has the responsibility of, and the way that we convinced the seller that this was a great thing for them is that on lot number 1 and lot number 3, they would, after we put the end buyers in place, they would receive $300 a month on those, and there would be a note put in place on each one of them for half of that money that was borrowed above what the seller owed, which is the $66,435. So I hope I'm not going too fast and too crazy here. This is just 6th grade math here. But the bottom line is, so there'll be a note that's in first position for the seller on lot 1 as the recipient, and lot 3, another note, $300 a month for that one. So Lee will be responsible to pay the $300 on lot 1, the $300 on lot 3, and the $900 on lot 2. Now the important thing to understand here is when that refi happens, the whole thing's being subdivided, and we want the refi to only be against the lot number 2. We don't want any debt against lot 1 or 3, just what the seller gets. So that puts the seller in first position automatically for those 2 notes. Now, you're probably looking at it and going, but how much can Lee actually get out of this? Well, all day long we know exactly what our buyers list tells us, and you know, I'm closer to 8,000 buyers in the local area, and so I know that I can collect on double wides on property like that. I know that I can collect anywhere from $1,100 to $1,600 a month. So we'll just say it's $1,200 per month for each one of those. So Lee's living in his house, costs him $900, and Lee's got those 2 lots with mobile homes on them that cost him $300 each. He's receiving $1,200 coming in on them. Now this is if he doesn't have debt on either one of the 2 mobile homes. So he's got $2,400 coming in, $600 going out, and $900 going out. So $900 and $600 is $1,500 going out and $2,400 coming in. All right, so let's go over those numbers again. Lee's paying $900 out for his house, $300 out for lot 1, and $300 out for lot 2. The grand total of those three of Lee's money going out is $1,500 per month. The grand total coming in of lot 1 and 3 is $2,400. Now, in addition to that, both of those homes will bring in a nice down payment. Down payments will be somewhere between $3,000 on the low end, probably no more than $20,000 on the high end for each one of those lots. So let's just call it $5,000 each. There's 10 grand coming in, so there's $10,000 to Lee. His monthly obligation is $1,500 going out, $2,400 going in, which means he lives in the house for free. Okay? So now let's Lee, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, it sounds great.
Everything looks good on paper, doesn't it?
I'm looking forward to everything. Yeah.
Well, the other thing for people to realize is the loans that are on lot 1 and lot 3 are going to be somewhere in the ballpark of half of the difference between the 130 and the 66.4. So if it was just 66,000, so that's 64,000. No, I'm sorry, 54,000 more. Is that right? No, 64,000. So 64 divided by 2 is 32,000. So there's going to be a note for 32,000 on lot 1 and a note for 32,000 on lot 2. Each one of those will sell for about 130 the first time. Now, how many times will you resell that, where people will move in under a lease purchase and change their mind and move out, and you're collecting $3,000 to $5,000 to $15,000 down on each one and cash flow on it? How many times will that happen? Who knows? Maybe just once. Could be 10 times. So the bottom line is, at a minimum, you're going to get 130 out of each one of those other two lots. So the whole thing, and you're getting to live there, and for free, basically, is the way that it's working out for you. All right. So anything else you want to add to it, Lee, before I bring people on with questions?
I am just so pleased that I found you, Joe. There's nothing much else I can say. Just
all right. Okay. Well, let's get some. Let's go ahead and jump into some questions, Heather and Lee. If you'll stay on, because some of the questions they might be asking you about why on earth would you take a chance on this, or whatever the case may be. Yes. So, Heather, if you would go ahead and jump into the question world. Y'all don't be shy now. Ask some questions.
Alrighty. Nobody's typed any questions yet, so I'm waiting to see if anybody raises their hand. Now remember, if you want to type in a question, it's on that toolbar where it says questions, and if you just click on the little plus sign to turn it and open it up, it'll have a little box for you to type into. And if you would like to ask your question with an audio, all you have to do is click the little hand symbol with the green arrow pointing up, and that'll raise your hand, alerting me that you have a question to ask.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell people a question they should be asking right now. And the question should be like this. First, it would be a statement. Listen, I don't want to get into replacing the roof and taking trees down and putting, running water lines and putting 2 home sites in place. So why in the world would, anybody want to do that? And the answer is that Lee is getting this property at $900 a month or $180,000. He's selling the and then he's got the cost of let's see, it would be 64,000 more. So he's got the cost of that. So add the 64 to the 180, which puts that at 244. So Lee's obligation is 244. He's selling the 2 home sites at 130, and don't forget, the first position note on lot 1 and lot 3 is for about 32,000 to the original seller. But the balance of that, which is about 98,000 on each one of those, is Lee a seller carryback second on each one. So not only will Lee have $98,000 coming to him, but he'll also have all the interest that he wants to charge on that too. And you know, if you've never paid attention to a mortgage before, the first 7 to 10 years is a lot of interest. So the monthly payments that Lee will be receiving on that, plus the down payment, is a lot of money. So it's worth way more than $440,000. Plus, it provides him a free place to live. But you know, the question would be, why in the world would you want to do that? And the answer is because the numbers add up way in Lee's favor. Obviously, he didn't have to do this. He could have just had a $10 investment, which is what it was, and not move into the house, put a lease purchase tenant and buyer in place in the house, still do the same thing of separating off the properties on paper, having it set up to purchase the sliver of land behind that, and then sold the whole thing to an investor for maybe $300,000 who wanted to make the $440 plus, and Lee not do any of that stuff, just make, you know, maybe about $100,000 profit off of it. Okay, so there's a couple of answers to that, but come on guys, you got to ask some questions on this now.
All right, our first question will be from Joe.
Okay.
All right, Joe, if you'd like to talk, you're unmuted now. Joe Amick?
Hey, Joe Amick? Where is Joe calling in from, Heather? Do we know?
No. Actually,
okay.
Here we go. I just muted you back, Joe, but I see that you have typed in your question to the questions box.
Okay, Heather, can you read that?
Yes. They asked, what would you do with this field if in a different area and did not have a large buyer's list?
I would not do anything at all, because you'd absolutely be the craziest investor in the world since 2008 if you don't build your buyer's list first. You know, in 2007 and back, I used to do deals like this all the time. Lots of you know, buy it, subdivide it out, put some home sites on it, maybe just sell the lots themselves, maybe do some upsizing of the original home that's there and add to it, you know, different things like that. And then I would then put it on the market for sale. Either I'd do it myself or I would have realtors look for buyers for me. And so in 2007 and back, when banks didn't have a problem writing checks, it was real easy to know, yeah, listen, I know I'm going to make money off this. It's a gut feeling, no problem. In 2008, when the banks started falling apart and weren't able to write checks, and they still aren't like they used to, then you need to have a strong buyer's list first who are telling you exactly what they are willing to pay down in a month, so that in the event that you don't want to cash this out or can't cash this out, you can turn this into a huge profit by just holding it, staying in the game, and becoming partly becoming the bank without taking any risk whatsoever. So you never ever in this economy jump into this without knowing what your buyers are going to do first. See, the whole power of Lee being able to do this is being able to lean on me, for me understanding and knowing how to pay attention to the market and let the market speak to me first before you go out and do this type of endeavor. And I can do that anywhere in the world in a matter of a week to two and know exactly what it's worth and what we're going to be able to make off of it if you decide you wanted to partner up with me and us do it together. So, Joe, I hope that answers your question.
Joe, let me add, it's very, very important to have a good coach. When I started out with property in London, if I hadn't had Joe to coach me through that and build my buyer's list, it wouldn't have sold like it did. And I already have buyers for this property here. I'm not using Joe at all.
Yeah. So in London, you know, there was 5 properties that was taken over, and these 5 properties, just to kind of give you an idea what they look like, the property that was probably the most popular, they were all in pretty sad shape, but the one that was the most popular, it could have been used in a horror movie where you walk through and it's like you're moving curtains, but it's actually cobwebs walking through the house. It was that thick with cobwebs and, you know, lots of issues. So there was 5 different homes, and all 5 of those were all, well, there was three PIN numbers, which meant there was 3 pieces of property. So some of them weren't even subdivided off onto their own property. So we got the seller, showed the seller what to do, talked to the surveyor, and had the whole thing resurveyed and set up with individual sites. And I want to say that the seller was going to be willing to take, I think, $78,000 for the whole thing, lock, stock, and barrel, and we were able to make, I know it was a little over $300,000, but it might have been more than that. It was, let's see, 50, 100, 50, 200, 250, yeah, about a little over $300,000 is what came in off of that based on what we did with it. So, yeah, Lee, that was kind of an interesting thing, and you know, and the thing is, you weren't even there, but a grand total, what, 2 or 3 months?
That's about right.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, you know, and that's from start to finish. You know, starting to build the buyers list, being on site, and then getting all the properties sold with, you know, backup contracts, and then a much larger buyers list to do other deals in the same area.
And we're still building the buyers list there.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, Heather, any more questions?
Yeah. Our next question is from Brett. They ask, I might have missed this, but how did you find these deals?
Okay, so Lee was living in his house that he had owned for about 10 years, and Lee wanted to look for something lesser expensive. His payments were a little bit too high on that house. Is that right so far, Lee?
That sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he wanted to lower his monthly outgoing. You know, to increase your wealth, you can increase your cash flow, and you can decrease your expenses. So Lee was looking to decrease his expenses while he was learning from me how to increase his cash flow. So Lee was marketed his house for sale, and he did it through us. And so then we ramped up the sales process, and in a weekend we found the buyer for his house. When we found the buyer, of course, in our way of finding out where the buyer's coming from and all that kind of stuff, and just a little normal mom and pop-ish chit-chat, the buyer was coming from a rental property. Well, if the buyer is buying Lee's house and he's moving out of, he and his family are moving out of a rental property, doesn't that create a void in the person who owns that house that they would like to fill? So immediately when that kind of situation happens, we look to go right to the owner, the landlord or the seller of that property, and say, hey, we're interested in buying your house. If you'd like to sell it, we'd like to chat with you. So that's where that deal came from. Actually, Lee selling the house that he was living in, the person buying it was a tenant of this property. Okay? You never want to leave a stone unturned. There's so much opportunity, so many different directions. Anyone coming to buy one of your houses was living somewhere. Now, they may have been living with mom and dad or with the kids or whatever, but you know, a lot of times they're coming from either a house that they'd love to sell and can't, or, you know, so there's a possibility you could take over that, and it might be in this state, it might be in another state. You might want to joint venture and connect with one of my student investors where they're coming from. So, you know, right now I have a guy who is actually on the road driving, supposed to be here sometime tomorrow night, who is buying one of my houses, and he's coming from Sacramento. He has a house in Sacramento that he'd love to sell. So when he gets here and we get the dust settled with him getting settled in the house that he's buying from me, then I'm going to work with him and one of my investors in that area to get his house sold. I have another person that I just met with today who's wanting to buy a second house of mine, who he actually lives here now in a hotel. His family is in, I forget where at in Ohio, but they're in Ohio right now. He's got 2 kids in elementary school, and he's been trying to sell his house in Ohio for about 6 months. The wife and the kids are staying there until the house is sold. So once he gets into my house here, then when the dust settles and him getting set up in there, then I'm going to quickly help him get his house sold in Ohio. So you pay attention to what's going on around you and what they have to say, because, well, just go back to what my motto is. Identify the problem and solve it for a fair profit. So, and then if I can get his house sold in Ohio, where's that equity going to be spent that he's receiving? Oh, I know a good place. How about on the house that he's buying from me? So anyway, there's so many different ways of looking at this and doing it. Okay, next question.
All right, our next question is from Ed, and Ed asks, wouldn't there be other costs like driveway paving, utilities, connections, septic tank installs, etc. that would need to be included?
Yeah, we already talked about we're using the well for the water source, and you saw the PVC pipe. It's actually been ran. We went ahead and did that. We ran the water lines to where the home sites will be put, and we talked about the septic tanks would be put in. Both properties have great soil, but both septic tanks would be put in, and there's no cost for the power lines to come in, and there's no requirement for a driveway to be paved. People can have a paved driveway. That's up to them. They can add that to it themselves, but that's not on us. But there's no requirement in that neighborhood where you have to put in a paved driveway.
All right. Our next question is
But wait a minute. I'm sorry, Heather. Let's go back to Ed though. But Ed, think about this. We still have 19 grand left over for all the what ifs. And I think I dropped it to 15 grand for all the what ifs. $15,000 sitting there, money to be used. That's a lot of money when everything else is already taken care of. The cost of the mobile homes, you know, the setups, the septic tank, the water lines are already ran. There's not, you know, this is not a tremendously expensive project. But what if we needed another $30,000? Is that okay to borrow $30,000 more and make our monthly payment, instead of, with $2,400 coming in, instead of $1,500 going out, let's say $1,750 is going out, and we got $2,400 coming in, and we're living for free? Are we still okay? It's sixth grade math. Just kind of think about it for a minute and look in there. And you know, you can cross your T's and dot your I's and look for pennies and dimes and dollars here and there. But the bottom line is, Lee and his family are living in a home that they love for free, because the two properties on each side are paying for it. And then, in addition to the monthly income coming in, there's also the down payment money that's coming on each side from each one of those lots. So there's tons of money there to use if you wanted to go through the expense of paving driveways and all that. Paving a driveway going in there, you probably could spend somewhere between, if you wanted to do concrete, you could probably spend somewhere between $800 and $4,000 on each one. And we're looking at down payments coming in of $3,000 to $15,000, maybe $20,000 on each one. But there's no requirement to do that. So anyway, next question.
All right. Our next question is from Pete. Pete asks, why did the seller decide to take a loss? Just good negotiating on your part? What I mean is, you said the seller monthly payments were $1,200 and you negotiated a $900 payment.
Yep. So the seller has a monthly payment and is looking at 6 more years on that debt. So the seller wants to get out from underneath that debt. They want that house paid off, and they want the balance of the $180,000 that they were asking for it. So what is that? $114,000. So they're looking for $114,000 and the $66,000 to be paid off. But they don't want the house sitting there empty, and they've already experienced the fact that they're having to rent it because they can't sell it in the traditional wisdom world with realtors and themselves and all that kind of stuff. So they went down the road of just trying to rent the property for a while, waiting for the economy to change. Then when I popped up with this plan, through what Lee's efforts, the plan makes sense to them. They don't want to try to do this themselves. You think about this, they own the house. They could have done everything that we're doing right now and put this whole thing together. That's not what they're interested in. They want to play with their grandchildren. They don't want to take on a major project. So they were happy with letting us do this. And Lee, do you know what the original tenant that bought your house, what they were paying per month?
They were paying $1,200.
Okay, so that renter was paying $1,200. So when we negotiated it out, yeah, I'm probably a bit more savvy with negotiating. You should keep that in the back of your mind when you want to joint venture with me to get the numbers to work out right for you in your future. But we're not a renter just walking in and saying, hey, we want you to take care of anything that goes wrong if the water heater goes out. We're going in as a lease purchase buyer and saying, look, you no longer have to worry about any maintenance or upkeep, and all that kind of stuff. So that takes a little burden off their mind. They know they're not going to get a call at 3 a.m. saying my toilet's backing up with this type of deal. So that's kind of an easy thing for them to go, oh, well then, $300 a month, it probably is only going to be for a few years, and I'm happy about that. But so that's the beginning of this. But then look how I took them having a negative, a loss, if you look at it from a monthly perspective, into them receiving $600 extra a month and no $300 a month going into red. So that made it easy as a selling point, and they get to see the progress. They also get a little more cash out of the deal on this if everything works out right, which I know it will. So Lee can give them extra money on it if he wants to. But anyway, so there's a lot of different things that can be done there in the negotiations of this. The focus is, when does the $300 per month on lot 1 and 3 start being paid? After Lee's receiving an income from end buyers who are in those lots. So that's not costing Lee anything at all. He's still paying just the $900 per month, and there's all the money sitting right there. Now this is only one way of doing this, but there's a ton of ways. Lee could have gone after a private investor who wanted to jump into this and get those 2 notes and earn just the interest alone on lot 1 and lot 3. He could have gone that route. Meanwhile, the seller continues paying down on the debt that they have with part of Lee's money and part of their own until they have no more debt, and then Lee's still paying $900, but they don't have $1,200 to go out anymore. They've got nothing going out. So anyway, with the exception of taxes and insurance. But there's a lot of different ways of looking at this. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. This is just one way, and I just thought it was a cool way of letting people work together. Lee and Lynette met with the seller, and I won't say their names on purpose, the seller's names, but met with the seller and the seller's wife, the husband and wife, and they hit it off. They really hit it off well, and so knowing all this was going on, it was like, well, listen, here's a great way that all of y'all can work together, and how can you do this? All you got to do is just listen to what I'm telling you to do. This is your part, you do this. This is your part, you do that. And if you do this, this is what you're going to get out of it. And if you do that, this is what you're going to get out of it. So there's really nothing about being all that savvy a negotiator. It's more about just, identifying problems, solving them for a fair profit for me and a fair profit for everyone else involved. Obviously, they know that Lee's going to make money off of this, and they know about how much money Lee's going to make off of it, and they're happy with that. So, okay. Next question.
Our next question is from Ed, and Ed says, is the seller requesting any protections for turning over $60,000 to an unknown buyer to get the 2 houses bought and brought to rent-ready condition?
Yeah, if you would remember in the beginning, we wanted the lien on the money that's being borrowed against just the house, which is lot number 2. For that money to be put in place for Lee to be able to use it, lot 1 is having half of it put against it as a note in first position that has the seller as a recipient. So the seller has a deed to secure debt, a note in place, so instead of it being Bank of America loaning this money for this deal, it's Bank of Seller. So in lot 1, there's a lien in first position for the seller being the recipient, and that makes that's set up as a deed to secure debt, filed at the courthouse, lien against the property, and then the same thing on lot 3. So, and they still own the house that is lot 2. So remember, they still own that house. This is all set up where Lee will own lot 1 and lot 3, but lot 2, the original seller, still owns the house until Lee pays them off. So that's the security. The seller has a lien on lot 1, lien on lot 3, and actually owns the house on lot 2. Now, could Lee do this as a subject to purchase? Yes, but we didn't want to push it and scare anybody or anything like that. So this is just a comfortable, smooth, simple mom and pop-ish thing that makes everyone involved benefiting from this whole deal. Okay, next question. Heather, somehow I'm not hearing you come through with the next question.
Our next question is from Pete, and Pete asks, is it correct that 2 of the lots are empty and you are coming out of pocket to place trailers on those?
No, the money is coming from the seller refi. So look at this chart that's sitting on your screen right now. The seller is refinancing lot number 2, and so the seller owes $66,000 on the whole thing. When the seller refinances lot number 2, the difference between the $66,000 and the $130,000 is the cash sitting there for Lee to purchase the homes and do the septic tanks for the lot 1 and lot 3. The only thing I'm telling you that's a little different than that is Lee can literally go after 2 mobile homes that he takes over the payments on and doesn't have to pay anything but just the setup charges. Setup charges could be, moving and setup could be somewhere around $4,000 each, so that's $8,000 on 2 different homes, and take over the monthly payments on 2 different homes. Let's say the monthly payments were $500 a piece on each one of them. So there's $1,000 going out plus the $600 going out to the original owner, to the seller. So that's $1,100 going out, and Lee didn't have to use any of or much. We're looking at $4,000 plus septic tank. Let's say $6,000, so that's $12,000. Maybe a couple other hidden things. Let's say that Lee used a grand total of $20,000 of this $64,000 that's sitting there. So he uses $24,000 and has monthly payments on the 2 mobile homes that he took over the debt on, and pays this $300 each one to the seller. So that means that Lee's paying out $600 plus $500 each. So that's $1,600 going out on that, plus the $900 of his house. So then if he does it that way, he's got $2,500 going out, and if he only gets $1,200 per month on each one, he's got $2,400 coming in. So it's costing him $100 a month to live in that brick home on an acre of ground. Okay, plus the down payments from the buyers of lot 1 and lot 3. All right. Next question.
All right. One moment. Okay, Lloyd, you're unmuted now, and you should be able to talk.
I was just curious, how did Lee get into position to work these deals with you?
Okay, well, Lee became a student of mine, and he became not only did he take some training from me, but he also became a mentoring student of mine. The the actual first real strong connection after he took a little bit of training was he saw me market. I ran a little, I'm looking for someone who wants to do some deals in London, Kentucky. Now I'm outside of Savannah, Georgia, but my next door neighbor that I built their house for them years ago used to live in London, Kentucky. She has 5 homes there. One of them was a home that she and her husband lived in. They moved here when I built the house for them. They moved here just many years ago. And then later on, her husband, Bill, was the one managing the properties in Kentucky through a family member. The family member, now we know the business dealings between family and friends, well, the family member wasn't doing the right thing, so there was never any income coming in off the properties. So I had told Bill that, I could help him do something with that, and so he tried to do some things on his own, but wasn't able to quite get it accomplished, and then he passed away. Of course, it had nothing to do with the deal, but he had passed away from a previous illness. And so when he passed away, it went on for a couple of years of nothing happening with the properties in Kentucky, and then one day Marilyn, who again is my neighbor, said, Joe, I got to do something with these properties. Matter of fact, we were on vacation together. It was last year. We were on vacation together. We had taken all the kids down to Disney World. And we were sitting out by the pool in the evening, kind of relaxing from the craziness that happens in those theme parks. And she was kind of upset, and we're like, what's wrong? All of a sudden she turned into this really, different personality was going on there. And we asked what was going on, and she said, the family member wasn't doing anything, and nothing's happening. She's not receiving any revenue off of it, and she wanted to just do something. I said, well, listen, if you want me to, I'll take care of it. She goes, okay, well, do what you can. So I ran an ad on Facebook looking for someone who was interested in becoming one of my students in that area. Now, I don't want to go take over houses in 4 states away or 14 hour drive or any of that kind of stuff. And I don't think anybody else, any of my students should either. But if I have a student in that area, then I can teach them and show them and venture with them in that area. So anywhere that anyone lives in the world, I can work with them in that area once they can speak my language, and then we can make deals happen. Well, Lee lives in my area, but he's from that London, Kentucky area. So when he saw that message on Facebook, then he said, hey, I want to do that, and I go there regularly anyway to visit my parents. So I'll just go a few extra times and do these deals. So that's how it started. Okay. Any other questions out there?
Alrighty, we have a question from Ed. He asks, is there any Dodd-Frank or Frank-Dodd issues with the seller owner financing multiple homes, or is a mortgage broker being used to originate the owner finance loans?
Well, in each state, you have a certain number that you can do of seller finance deals before you have to have a loan originator involved. But the bottom line is, when a loan originator is involved, it's not expensive at all. The loan originator being involved takes care of any kind of seller finance deal anyway. But if you think about this, where's the seller financing happening in this deal so far? Even when we put the 2 buyers in place in Lot 1 and Lot 3, there aren't any. There's no seller financing that's happened yet. Typically, like I was saying in the beginning, typically this is a lease purchase. We'll get somewhere between $3,000 to $15,000 and maybe $20,000 down. They're in a lease purchase program with us. They'll be in a lease purchase program with us until they get to a certain dollar figure that we want them to have before we convert the deed. When we convert the deed, then it becomes a seller finance deal. So how many of those can you do a year? For us, it's 3. So Lee can do 3 seller finance deals, but it doesn't become seller financing. It's still a lease purchase until they get the down payment up high enough. So let's just say that he receives $5,000 on each one. Their lease purchase tenant end buyers. They are not seller financed end buyers yet, but down the road there will be seller financing on each one. When the end buyer pays the total amount that Lee wants as a down payment before he converts the deed. That could be $20,000. So if they paid $5,000, there's $15,000 more for them to pay before it becomes a seller finance deal. So how many can Lee do in a year? 3. How many can he do in a year if he has a loan originator? As many as he wants. Okay? If there's $5,000 paid down, he's a lease purchase end buyer. You know, this is a lease purchase end buyer coming in, and then they pay another $5,000 down, and Lee says, you know what, that's good enough. $10,000 makes it me comfortable converting the deed. That extra $5,000, when he brings a loan originator into this to, you know, stamp off on their approval of looking at what he's done, typically their price is way, way, way less than what that $5,000 is. And that deal doesn't count against him at all as the total of 3 in a year. So it's very easy to do that. By the way, Dodd-Frank is an extension of what the SAFE Act became in 2009. So this year in January, Dodd-Frank kicked in and kind of limited a little bit more on the number of seller finance deals you can do unless you get a loan originator involved. It really wasn't directed towards us as investors, but the way that the wording is in that that whole setup kind of does point towards us too. So, you know, you don't want to be the one that's sitting out there in left field going, yeah, I'm doing it and don't worry about it. I'm not going to worry about it until somebody says something. The bottom line is that, you know, you have to comply with what Uncle Sam says that you should be doing when you're carrying financing on deals, when you're being a seller financed, putting it into a seller finance deal. And, you know, for me, I don't look at putting the loan originator in place any differently than I look at having a real estate attorney doing my real estate closings. You know, there's many different ways in many different states that you don't have to have, you know, an attorney doing the closing. I always say you should do that anyway. And so when you get to that point where you're doing that seller finance deal, then why not go ahead and pay the loan originator, who's a lot cheaper than the real estate attorney, to make sure that, you know, you don't have any issues with Uncle Sam. The other thing is, Lee could leave this as a rent-to-own type thing, even though I don't like those words, but he could leave it as a rent-to-own until they paid him everything he wanted before they bought the rest of it subject to. So he could do it that way and never have it as a seller finance deal either. Or he could just leave it as a rental property all the way until the total dollar figure has been paid to him and to the original seller, and then transfer the deed into their name. There's a million different ways of doing this, and keep out of the world of the Dodd-Frank seller financed goat screw, I'll just call it. So there's a ton of different ways of complying with the requirements and still making the math work out for you, and, you know, solving people's problems simultaneously. All right, next question.
Ed says, I thought the $300 to the seller was owner financing.
Yes, but that is not against Lee. That's against the owners of the property. So that seller financing counts towards the original sellers. So there's 2 seller finance deals sitting there, Lot 1 and Lot 3, not 4, but 2. So Lot 1 and Lot 3 are seller financed against the owner of the property, the original owner, which is the seller. Lee is the buyer in that case, not the seller. So seller financing does not count against Lee. Okay? Next question.
Our next question is from Lloyd. He says, you may have already covered this, and if you did, I apologize. Which course did we take? How much did it cost? And what was the length?
Okay. Hey, Lee, why don't you answer that?
Repeat the question, please.
They want to know what training, what course you took from me to learn how to do this? What did it cost? And what was the last thing, Heather? How long?
Yeah, how long was the course?
How long was the training?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we did the boot camp originally, and the boot camp really enlightened me about improving your buyers list, because I remember Joe asking me, how many buyers do you have? And I truly didn't understand the question coming from a real estate point of view. I ended up listening to Joe via his MP4s the first time around, and then going to a class. Then I drug my wife to a class. Joe gives me a substantial discount on the second and third class if I want to take those. And it was great when I brought Lynette into it, because it really enhanced our business.
Well, that way both of y'all can speak the same language instead of, you know, she's no longer from Venus and you're from Mars when it comes to business anyhow. So
I chose to take his mentoring in addition to the classes, because I really, really was going to do this. I mean, you have to go for it 100%, and that's what I did. So I guess initially 3 months got me going.
Okay, so you did 3 months of mentoring, and you did the boot camp about 3 times, I guess, is what you did the boot camp. So that's I'm adding the numbers up. So Lee probably spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $7,000 in everything that we just said to get himself up and going. Now, did Lee have to do it that way? Could he have just done the boot camp and gone and done deals himself? Yes, but there's a reason, and Lee, it's up to you if you want to say anything about what's going on there, you know, for you in the beginning when we first talked that breakfast that morning.
Well, I did. I scared Joe to death. I told him I had double vision due to many brain surgeries. So, to say the least, when we were coming back to his office, he was a little worried.
Yeah, he told me that on the way back from breakfast, and he was driving, that he has double vision. I said, well, Lee, make sure that you drive between the 2 vehicles that you're seeing, not, you know, anyway. But yeah, so, and Lee told me, you know, and man, I'm telling you, it's the God's honest truth. I'm surprised at how focused and on you are right this minute. But typically, when he gets up in the morning from the things that he's had happen to him, he can focus up until about 11 o'clock, maybe 12 noon time, and then after that, he's pretty much shot mentally for the day. So he needs to have the rest overnight to be able to focus again the next morning. So, you know, in Lee's world, he's got to get everything that he needs to do with his business done somewhere between 7 or 8 in the morning and noontime, and that's his only time that he can really focus. After that, he's mentally exhausted from, you know, the surgeries and all. So that was a little bit of a challenge for Lee, and that's why he went the route that he did. So, okay. Next question.
All right. Our next question is from Chris. Actually, he has 2 questions. His first question is, will this be replayed, this webinar? And his second question is there ever a problem of tenant eviction for non-payment?
Oh, there's always not a problem. There's always, in my world, when people learn from me. By the way, the person who asked the question just before this, the name of the boot camp is called Jumpstart Your Business Boot Camp. That's the boot camp that Lee's referring to. You know, I have many different things for different people at different levels with real estate investing, but this is just the very simple basics of real estate investing that we do from the get-go. My basic students that get started with me can do circles around my competition who are graduated masters with spending $60,000 or more in training. My students will do circles around them just with the basics. But anyway, I'm sorry. Heather, go ahead and go with the second 2 questions. I kind of lost my train of thought here. Heather, you had a 2 questions that you just asked? Okay. I have to go on mute? Okay, I'm sorry. I have to go on mute for 1 moment. Okay, there's a real estate deal that's happening right this minute. So instead of me going on mute, I think it's fair for you guys to just hear it happening. So, what is the question that just got called in? This by the way, this has nothing to do with training. This is my regular real estate investing business, and this is a question that's coming into me right now. So go ahead, Heather.
The question was if Derek can put his $10,000 down on our Barrister house if he can move in today.
Okay, so the answer is yes, he can move in tonight. The lockbox is on the door with the key in it, but he's got to, make his funds good to us tonight, and then it's up to Victoria, Mama, if how she wants to receive those funds. Okay, so tell her, yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Will do.
All right. So just to let you know who Derek is, remember I was saying that I had a buyer in today that's from Ohio. He's got 2 kids in elementary school. It's going to be, he already lives here. They're going to come here when they get the house sold up in Ohio. Also, I think his wife is a nursing student. She's trying to finish up a semester before she comes here too. But that's who that is. So that's a house that cost me $10, and here's 10 grand coming in to start off with, and then there's cash flow on it too, but I don't remember what it is. It's probably $300 or $400 a month cash flow on it. But anyhow, okay, so now let's go back to the 2 questions. Someone was just asking 2 questions, and I had to go back to the previous question to make sure everyone knew what that boot camp was called.
It was from Chris. He asked if this webinar will be replayed, and
okay, the answer to that is if Murphy doesn't screw up the recording and all that kind of stuff. Most of the time, our stuff records. Heather set it up to record, and everything's set up so that we can make that a replay. But sometimes something screws up where the daggone thing doesn't work. Pluto wasn't in line with Mars, and Venus wasn't over our left shoulder, or whatever. But yes, if everything works right, then yes, it will be a replay.
And
okay.
Chris's second question is there ever a problem of tenant eviction for non-payment?
Oh, that's right. Okay. Yes, but my students learn when, we always do what we say we're going to do. We never go back on our word. But when they go back on their word, my students know exactly how to say cha-ching when that happens. There's never in our world where it costs us. We're not landlords. We're not screwing around with people who are paying a security deposit. We're dealing with a whole different mentality person. We don't want renters in our properties. We want lease purchase and buyers. The only renters that I like in my properties are commercial tenants. That's a whole different ballgame, a whole different world. So in my commercial deals, I'm okay with renters in that world. But in my residential properties, I don't want renter mentality people in them. I want lease purchase tenant and buyers in there. People who know that they're responsible for maintenance, upkeep, taxes, insurance. It's their house. They can do with it what they like within reason, but they put a significant amount of skin in the game so that in the event that they don't do the right thing, they're out. If they don't pay, they don't stay, and they've lost everything they put into it because they went back on their word. Okay? So yes, that does happen, and we don't like the fact that it happens, but when it does, we're not going to take the hit for it. They take the hit for it. Okay? Next question?
That appears to be all the questions right now.
Okay. All right. Well, I really appreciate everyone coming on. There's some great questions. This isn't my typical buy houses, no money, no credit, no lender, have it sold before you commit to it. This is a deal where the person is acquiring the property for $10. They could have turned around and made money off of it and moved on to more investment properties, but that's not what they wanted to do. They want to be able to live there for free and let the property make money for them. If they don't live long enough to make all the money off of it, everything that they're making off of it can be willed to their heirs as well. I don't care if you're 18 years old, you can put a deal in place like this and retire just off of that one deal. That's very easy to do there. You can't travel the world and own a jet and yachts and all that, but you can live comfortably off of the income that comes in off of a deal like that. So I appreciate everyone coming, and I will bid you good night. Yes?
We have one quick question from Lloyd. He wants to know when the next boot camp training is.
We haven't chosen a date yet, Lloyd. It's going to be pretty soon. We'll be putting that out, but we haven't chosen a date. To be honest with you, it's been over 3 weeks since I've been back to my office, with the exception of today and one other day about a week ago. So I have been tied up in a bunch of different deals going on. One was Lee's. There's been several others. Tomorrow we're doing a deal. We did one today. We're doing one tomorrow that we're going to be talking about next week. You better make sure that you're on the webinar next week, and you'll see video of this one with the buyers in place, and you're absolutely going to be blown away by what you watch on camera with this. But we've been so busy with that stuff. Sometimes I have to put my real estate deals on hold because of my training business, and sometimes I have to put my training business on hold because of my real estate business. So we got another boot camp coming up pretty soon, and as soon as we have chosen a date that makes sense, then we'll be putting it out there. I was thinking about on Thanksgiving Day. Maybe that's it. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, any other questions? Is that it, Heather?
We have a quick request from Pete. He says, Joe, tell us what happened with that graveyard property on the next call.
Oh, okay. It won't be the next call because we have a whole different thing that's going on with that now. That it's driving me nuts with my father-in-law. But anyway, I figured out a way of having my cake and eating it too, and he gets to bite on it at the same time. So yeah, I will put that out there. It'll be probably a teleconference we'll do on that one, but it was such an easy solution to it, and I didn't see it at first, but now it's like, oh hell, this is a sometimes when I went over there and I kind of helped with the roof a little bit with Lee's place, doing things like that clears my mind so that I can focus more. And while I was on that roof, I came up with a solution for him with that property. But yeah, you guys will find out about it in the next teleconference. But next week there'll be another webinar with something that is going to blow your mind. Okay, everyone, I bid you good night.